some questions?
Of course, yes. We're going to do some more questions, but Senator Roth would like to ask some questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a fan of the VA medical system. I have to say that, full disclosure. It saved my brother-in-law's life and gave him 5 extra years that we didn't think we were going to have. And so that's in part the interest, that's part the motivator for some of my questions about the VA medical enrollment rates, because I think the VA medical system, frankly, is the best place to treat veterans' medical conditions of whatever type or nature. So I guess this goes to USDVA. Given the fact that we now have data and you can match up DOD data with CDCR data, do you have, and there should not be any undisclosed veterans in the system at this point, what is our capture rate in terms of the enrollment of those individuals who would otherwise qualify for VA medical services in the VA medical system, either during the time they're inside the wire or as they move out to transitional and supportive housing and beyond?
That's an excellent question, Senator. I don't know that I have the answer for that. I can tell you that on the VA side, we use the VRSS information to target where we're going to do our outreach and know how often we may need to go to a facility and make sure we're not missing anyone. And granted, we do only have the 2 full-time and the 1 part-time, and I agree that that's not enough. I don't know whether or not TCMP staff actually use that VRSS database to capture the enrollment paperwork, or whether they just ask for self-report when they're preparing for planning reentry services with them.
How do we get a handle on this? I mean, I realize that USDVA, you have more than enough on your plate. In fact, you have 5 or 10 plates on the table at any one time. But I'd like to know, and I do have some questions for you, Mr. Dixon, as well, so you may want to run. But how do we get a handle on this, and how do we, either as a state, provide appropriate funding for personnel to work this issue so that when an individual moves from one of our CDCR facilities outside the wire, that to the extent that individual is capable, is qualified to be enrolled in the VA medical system by reason of disability, that that person is so enrolled and doesn't slip through the cracks, because that's what I'm concerned about. When you have 2 governments moving side by side, then there is at least some possibility, if not a likelihood, that folks are going to drop through the crack. And that's what I don't want to see. We're dealing with a vulnerable population that has some disadvantages that they have to work through anyway. If they have medical problems, physical or mental, on top of that, sufficient to qualify them as being disabled from the VA standpoint, then we need to make every effort as a state, certainly, to capture those folks and make sure that they receive the treatment that they richly deserve. So I guess I'm looking to you, USDVA, just as I'm looking to our state, your state partners, to come up with a solution. And if it requires funding, state funding, well, it wouldn't be the first time that we helped, that we step up to the plate as a state and we do the right thing here. So.
Well, I'm sure our reentry specialists would agree with me that additional county veteran service officers who could come into the prisons to help with the claims, because that's something that even if we were to hire additional VA reentry specialists, that's not something, that's not a role that we typically do. We are there to provide consultation and assessments for VA healthcare services, but we don't actually file the claim process. So in terms of getting access to disability and other benefits, more county veteran service officers who can go into prisons would be helpful. As I said earlier, I don't really know how CDCR is using the VRSS report. They do get the VRSS report that lets them know who is a veteran. And so
we have the data.
You have the data in terms of knowing that they're a veteran. It doesn't necessarily let you know whether they're already getting a disability or they're already connected with VA healthcare. But if you were to use that data, for example, to give it to the TCMP staff as instead of asking for veterans to self-report, which we already know underrepresents when they self-report, then they could be using that to make sure that every veteran who walks through their door is provided with the application paperwork for VA healthcare in advance of their release. And again, our reentry specialists are there to help guide that process and monitor it and provide feedback as quickly as possible.
So then I guess from my personal perspective, I'll be looking to our state secretaries to come up with some information as to what they do presently, what they could do, what more they could do, and what the metrics are, what the goals and objectives and outcomes should be from this process, because they have the data from you. We just have to use it to make sure we use it efficiently and effectively to capture the folks that need to be captured and make sure they're in the system.
And I'd be happy to go back to my leadership to find out if they know whether or not, by looking at VRSS, whether or not they also can cross-check it to our healthcare system to see who's already enrolled. At the moment, that's not the intent or the way that it's being used. It's just meant to help as an engagement tool and identify for outreach benefits. But I'm certainly happy to go back and see if it could be.
Well, with the chairman's permission, and we'll see what, I'll have an opportunity to weigh in, I'm sure. Perhaps we can get some information from both the CDCR and our state DVA on this issue and to enlighten us.
I have more questions for them, too.
And Mr. Dixon, just one follow-up, Mr. Chair, from Mr. Dixon. You referenced a problem with physical exams which lead to disability ratings, as I understand it, with the VA. So it would be very helpful if, when we have veterans in our system who have physical or mental problems, to get that all sorted out so that when they move through the pipeline outside the wire to transitional facilities or beyond, that we have this disability rating thing fixed or sorted out. Because it's my understanding that if we don't, it takes a while for that process to occur.
Well, sir, my experience of going inside, once we initiate an action, claim side of it, we do it all wirelessly. A lot of them are receiving treatment inside the facility, but our obstacle is, although they're receiving treatment inside the facility, some of the physical disabilities, such as, say, for instance, if I have a knee impingement and I need an exam to determine the level of that disability, whether it's going to be increased or not, trying to get the problem fixed for a lifer who's never going to get outside the wire is an issue. So that gap in service is a hard one.
Well, that's on us, but I mean, what about the person that's in there for 10 years?
So the 10-year person...
And is identified as a veteran who would otherwise qualify for VA medical benefits but for the incarceration. I assume we can start the paperwork. Can you then obtain a physical and get a disability rating before the individual is released, so that when they are in fact released, they could move right into the VA medical system and begin receiving the benefits that they deserve?
No, sir. The comp and pen for the physical parts is not, they're not allowed to go outside to do the comp and pen because CDC won't transport, or there's no partnership, and the VA is not authorized to go into the correctional facility to give that person that compensation and pension exam.
So is the problem, it's not that the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs won't do the physical, it's that we won't transport the individual to the VA medical facility for the physical exam.
Yes, sir.
So it's a state issue. Okay, so we need to look at that too.
But on the VA side, they are doing the mental health exams via teleconference at Salinas Valley and Soledad Prison. So that obstacle has been overcome.
Thank you. We'll need to look at the physical piece, the physical exam piece of it as well at some point.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If we could have some of you move around now and we get our other witnesses to come up. Justice Moore, we'd like you to stay out there too, but the others move around. We have Mary Donovan, Roberto Herrera, and Scott Johnson.
Senator, I have some written testimony. To whom should I give it?
This gentleman, right there, the sergeant behind you there, Justice Moore. And if the secretaries could hang around, we'll have kind of all of you together for some final maybe questions from the members. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, Mary Donovan is the executive director of the Veterans Healing Veterans from the Inside Out. I'm familiar with her program, and it's an exemplary program. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you, Senator Nielsen, and thank you, members of the committee. I'm honored to be here. It's a wonderful opportunity. Veterans Healing Veterans from the Inside Out is a trauma recovery program for veterans incarcerated at San Quentin, founded in 2012 by a Marine serving a life sentence. He had benefited from programs designed to foster insight and self-regulation, But he felt even in those settings that he couldn't fully share the harrowing details of his combat experience. So he brought together a group of veterans to write and share personal stories of military and life trauma. And this practice proved very fruitful. We call it narrative therapy. It's simple but not always easy. Members write on prompts that explore ramifications of past trauma, and then they challenge and support each other in a process of developing insight into the circumstances and choices that brought them to prison. And they challenge each other very rigorously and with a lot of compassion, too. Since that time, the program has grown to meet a substantial need. We now have 4 narrative therapy peer support groups running at San Quentin, along with trainings in group facilitation and one-on-one mentorship. And we partner with aligned organizations to offer yoga, mindfulness, and theater practice. We've served around 100 veterans at San Quentin, and we're now expanding to a second prison, Duell Vocational Institution in Tracy. There's no one road from the military to prison for those who make that journey. But among our members, certain themes emerge. Early life trauma is rife. Many entered the service to escape dysfunctional and/or disenfranchised backgrounds. Combat, military sexual trauma, and other experiences of humiliation and harassment suffered during service, and I certainly want to point out, I know this does not describe every military person's experience, but we are dealing with a lot of the people who did have those experiences. These experiences may compound that initial trauma. Self-medication and addiction followed for some. For others, the skills and adaptations that made them lethal and efficient warriors left them ill-equipped to function in the civilian world. But their military service also imbued these men, and one day I'll be able to say men and women, we've only been in male facilities so far, with an extraordinary passion and commitment to serving, even saving, their fellow veterans. This is illustrated by a quote, which I'll close with, from one of our members. And he says, "Veterans Healing Veterans has instilled within me a compelling desire to work with others to help them find the inner peace and restored spiritual fortitude that I've been able to find in this family of vets. The trauma that I experienced in the military may always be a part of me, but it's the Veterans Healing Veterans philosophy that defines me now. I talk openly about this now because of the work I've been able to do in this program, and I'll help to save the lives of other vets as VHV has saved mine."
Thank you, Ms. Donovan. Dr. Scott Johnson, Salinas Valley State Prison.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me today. My name is Dr. Scott Johnson. I'm a veteran, a psychologist. I have 8 years of experience working with the Department of Corrections and also in serving incarcerated veterans. We currently provide treatment of PTSD by clinicians who have been trained by the VA. We liaise with the VSO, CalVet, and VA. We provide staff outreach as we have a high staff population that have served both peacetime and in combat. We have implemented a pilot SPCA rescue rehabilitation program teaching skills through the service of others. And following Lieutenant DeRosa's lead, we have started a fledgling VSO project at Salinas Valley, veterans serving veterans. Some of the things that we are seeking to do, we are very close to implementing a service canine training program, because for many of our veterans, they feel undeserving, and many of them feel that they are that they don't need help or just feeling beyond redemption. So, but yet they still feel the urgent need to help other veterans, especially disabled veterans, and to help prevent incarceration in the first place. And this is healing our veterans through the service to other veterans. We are exploring on how to provide an alternative enhanced outpatient program for our veterans, because many of our veterans need more than typical mental health, yet our EOP program is for individuals who suffer such diagnoses as schizophrenia. So as this is an excellent program but not designed for our veterans, many of our veterans get into this program and become more stuck. So we are exploring that. We are seeking a recognition of the post-traumatic stress disorder under the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 within our prison system. And lastly, we are seeking to establish a first Californian veteran honor block as a way of providing better services for our veterans. This is already successful in 25 jails and 36 prisons across the nation. These provide peer support, reminders of who they are, and also has a concentration of for the provision of veteran-related services for both on-site and for our volunteers. And with this, to create a devoted department to serve our veterans on-site as the more that we can coordinate all veteran services, we can do more with what we have, as well as trying to expand when we can. So thank you for allowing me to speak on this today, and this is what we are doing and what we hope to seek to explore in the near future.
The honor block, is that a lower level of security or just extra services?
It is a concentration of veterans, because as of right now, we have veterans scattered across the Institute, which multiplies the amount of time that it takes to serve them. So concentrating them allows better provision, it allows peer support. And many of our veterans, one of the ways to help identify veterans and to serve veterans is our veterans want to help each other. So that would be a way to make so much of what we have go so much further.
Peer support, I get it, okay. And Mr. Herrera, please.
So thank you very much, Senator Nielsen, members of the committee. In late 2014, CDCR and Calvet formulated an interagency agreement that provides our departments to have greater access and visibility to veterans incarcerated in our state prisons. Through this effort, policies have been developed to assist veteran inmates in pursuing benefits and services they may have earned through their military service. To enhance outreach to incarcerated veterans, Calvet has maintained a goal to develop an outreach model that will educate all incarcerated veterans on the benefits and services available to them, while attempting to create a best practice delivery apparatus that could be replicated across all prisons and jails. Along with regular scheduled visits to various veteran support groups in prisons and collaborating with CDCR's community resource managers, Calvet continues to work on providing benefits information to each CDCR facility through their institution's libraries, physical mail systems, to each inmate that has been identified as a veteran. I want to highlight that Calvet continually explores ways to streamline the identification of and outreach to all veterans who are justice involved at both the state and local level. Given the existence of provisions within the penal code that allow for the divergent options like veteran treatment courts for veterans suffering from invisible wounds, the importance for swift confirmation of veteran status cannot be overstated. Although CDCR has taken the lead on system-wide identification by working very closely with the USDVA, efforts as efficient and reliable as CDCR's are only occurring in 4 of California's 58 county jail systems. Given that within CDCR facilities, as mentioned earlier, 60% of veteran inmates never self-identified, and that statistic is actually higher for female veterans who are incarcerated. The USDVA, Calvet, county veteran service officers, local sheriffs, and the county courts must continue to work together to ensure that veterans who are awaiting arraignment and those who have been convicted are identified early and efficiently in order to allow for the possible use of veteran-specific diversion and/or mitigation offered through statute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Justice Moore, do you have some women who have come through the Veterans Courts? Do you?
Yes. I would say that when I was just listening to Mr. Herrera, it brought to mind the fact that I would say somewhere between 90 and 95% of the women I have mentored have been suffering from military sexual trauma. And after the experiences that I had in Vietnam, knowing that they're still going on, I strongly believe that this MST is entrenched within the military culture, and I don't want you to forget the women who are suffering from this. However, men are suffering from it too. one of the men that I mentored, a big, strong, strapping Marine, married, heterosexual, and he was gang raped by others. So this is a problem, and it's one of the reasons that I am recommending that the State Bar receive some education, because I think it's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem for women especially because of the high numbers of them who are victims of this. I even had one young woman who, because she was ordered into counseling, VA counseling with men, she preferred to go to jail, to a woman's jail, rather than have anything to do with military men. So I just think it's a problem, and I hope the committee keeps that in mind.
Well, it's an ongoing, another priority, issues unique to female veterans. So we're always interested in input that you can yield to us in that regard. We have one more panel to proceed, but before we do, though, Senator Roth, some more questions, and then Senator Allen.
Mr. Herrera, I'm just trying to get an idea of why we still have difficulty identifying who is a veteran in our system, given the fact that apparently, I mean, it's the electronic age, and the Department of Defense certainly has records that at least, given privacy interests, whether somebody was in the service or not is probably not something that, you know, needs a high level of privacy protection. Given the fact that some veterans, that's my understanding, don't believe they're veterans unless they've served in combat, which we know not to be the case. So is there a list, a computerized list that exists out there that CalVet can take a look at, or county sheriffs can take a look at, the folks that run our county jails, to determine, run the names and match up and determine who in the system is a vet and who is not a vet, and then we can figure out what we do with that once we do that. Is that a clear question?
Yes, it is. I would start by saying let me describe CDCR's program just for a second and how they integrate with the USDVA to identify the veterans that are within their facilities. Basically, the database that CDCR uses, their inmate database, they send what is essentially an Excel spreadsheet to the VA through a web portal that only requires 5 fields of information: first, last, social. I believe prisoner ID is also in there. Nothing that isn't readily available. The turnaround time for the ID on veterans, from my understanding, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but it's relatively quick. I would even say as short as a week. CDCR gets that information. They know who their vets are. They send that information to CalVet, as well as information is shared with the homeless program with USDVA. So when you ask how can these other entities identify their veterans, personally, the simplest way, I think, would be for them to interface more directly with USDVA and engage VRSS across county jail systems and within the courts. And my understanding is that VRSS is open to all organizations that are within the justice system.
So we must have 100% identification rate by the time folks leave our CDCR system.
It's not perfect, but it's pretty good from what I understand from dealing with the data folks at CDCR. Errors will come back regarding whether the inmate provided an accurate name or an accurate social, but so long as the inmate has provided the necessary information, which is first, last, date of birth, things like that, my understanding is that it's very accurate at determining whether or not they are a veteran.
So in terms of figuring out what our issue is, the issue is not, for the most part, identification. The issue is what we do with the identifying data once we have it, and how many of those folks that we've identified we touch before they move out of the system.
So I would, to address the other part of your question, I would say it's also implementation at the local level to get our partners, CVSOs, county courts, to implement this information sharing system so that they know who their vets are.
In the jail system.
In the jail system, because, there is the MIL 100 form, which Justice Moore had indicated, but even that form is predicated on self-identification, which we know is essentially, veterans are known to underreport that status. This VRSS is not dependent on self-ID. It's dependent on the veteran giving the accurate information as to who they are.
You have something to add, Mr. Dixon?
Yes, sir, Senator Roth. Keep in mind that the Department of Veterans Affairs, we get it on the claims side of it. The only way that data system is going to be accurate is if that veteran ever engaged with the Department of Veterans Affairs. That means educational benefits, home loan benefits, compensation and pension benefits, or an inquiry. So if a veteran comes in and gets incarcerated, and they have not ever went to the VA for health care or any of those benefits, they will not come up in the Department of Veterans Affairs system. They will come up in the Department of Defense database system if they've ever served, and that's another database system that would have to probably have a partnership with. And also look at your selective guardsmen and women in reserves who don't consider themselves veterans but incurred an injury in service that may be eligible that don't identify. So,
Which is why I want to try to make the connection between the identification in CDCR and the benefit enrollment, if entitled, through the VA system. So.
If I may, just to elaborate a little bit more on the VRSS. So as was stated, the correctional institutions, first of all, it's open to any correctional institution VRSS who wants to participate in it. As I said earlier, CDCR was one of the first ones to implement it, even piloted it in the very beginning. There were a lot of glitches. For example, dependents of those who were in the military were showing up on that list. So if somebody was incarcerated, they themselves had never served, but maybe their father or mother had served, they were showing up on the list. But that's why we piloted in the 5 states, and California was one of the ones that did that. So as of today, CDCR uploads their entire inmate list through an Excel database to the secure portal that is VRSS. And that's where then the information, and I'm not sure that it's even a week, it may be a week, but I believe it's even less than that. The information is then sent back to CDCR in terms of just saying yes or no veteran status. So getting back your list of inmates, yes or no, they're a veteran. And then the more detailed information, protected information, goes to the VA staff indicating military history, branch of service, their discharge type, whether or not they're combat veterans, and whether or not they already have a service-connected disability. And this is using DOD information, so it's not just if they've used VA before. So it should be a pretty accurate. Obviously, the frequency is something that the correctional systems may determine on their own how often they want to do it. So in a state prison system, I think monthly is pretty standard nationwide, and that's what CDCR is doing. Within the jail systems, obviously because of the rapid turnaround of some inmates who may be there for even less than 24 hours, you're not going to catch everyone. But we do have some city or county jails that are actually doing it weekly. I believe San Francisco is doing it weekly. Some are only doing it monthly, and so you're obviously missing folks, and then of course we have many that aren't doing it at all who aren't participating. But the VA is ready, and we provide training to the IT folks and the leadership of the correctional institutions if they're interested in participating in that to help identify, because self-identification, even with a great form like the MIL 100 form, is going to underrepresent folks because of misinterpretations of what a veteran means, and of course stigma and shame for someone who may not want to identify.
And again, the question then is what we do with the data once you provide it to us. So, but thank you for doing what you do, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
may I say 2 things?
Justice Moore.
When the Veterans Working Group developed MIL 100, the Judicial Council form, Judicial Council forms are passed for approved or optional use or mandatory use. We recommended it to be mandatory use so that from that point on, we would know who the veterans were who came into the courts, but the Judicial Council only approved it for optional use. So if the legislature wanted something different, the legislature could take some action, but we did try to get it for mandatory use to prevent this identification problem in the future. The second thing I wanted to say is when Dr. Johnson was talking about how they have developed a reliable technique for finding out whether or not our inmates have PTSD as a result of military service, that you passed a statute that went into effect 16 months ago. It's Penal Code Section 1170.91. And 1170.91 says that the sentencing court shall consider military service as a mitigating factor, or words to that effect, when sentencing. Most of our inmates who are in court have not had the advantage of that statute, because statutes run prospectively rather than retrospectively. And it's just some food for thought for you with regard to this project that Dr. Johnson has.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah. Okay. Further question? We have one more panel. If we could have now Mr. Sean Stevens, and Mr. Stevens has a guest or two to join us, I believe. Yeah, please. Yes, panel 2, thank you very much for being up here with us today. Oh, did you have something you wanted to add, Mr. Hoffman? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I may, from the point of the service provider's perspective here, I mean, the VA and county affairs and Veterans Treatment Court do such a great job at getting our veterans out of prison. But when it comes to providing services for them, it's really important that we remember the nonprofits, the transitional housing services that are here, that are paramount in making sure that they're successful. For the VTC, we pick up our veterans straight from incarceration, and it is a all-day affair, all-week affair. You know, we plan their meetings with the vet reps. I have meetings with the county already set, and we take them from parole to clothing to food to reintegration. And this is a really big project, and it really takes a collaboration of the VA and county resources. And for us, you know, and I'm assuming every other nonprofit out here, we need those resources, we need those housing options, and particularly transitional housing options. Reentry for our veterans and for ourselves, yes, it is an option, but reentry is very close to incarceration. And transitional is statistically proven to be more successful to rehousing our veterans permanently and getting them reintegrated. Thank you.
It's an important point. And to panel 2, I want to thank you as you're all here. I'll have some closing remarks, and Senator Roth will as well. But while you're still here at the table, I want you to know that this is not an ending. This is a beginning. And we are going to entreat you to continue to be in communication with us. We will likely have other hearings prospectively. But if you have written communications or other things you want to let us know verbally, communicate through the committee staff or directly to myself or the senators on our committee, we welcome that. We purposely made this a pretty bold agenda today with a lot of things packed in. We wanted to really cover a lot of bases. I think we have, and I don't think we've been hasty in doing it. We hope that you feel that you've had ample time to say what you needed to say with us, but it's an open invitation. So this is not the last that you'll hear of us, and we surely hope not the last that we'll hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Stevens,
service.
come on forward. Yes.
Can I stay?
Yeah, we're done. No, Justice Moore, did you have another thing you wanted to add? I'm sorry.
No, Senator.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, you could step down then if you like.